Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Alderman. I am the Chief Behavioral Health Officer for the Health Center at Pillars Community Health. I've invited my colleague Anastasia here today to talk about recovery for Recovery Month. So before we get started, Anastasia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Anastasia Andriva, and I'm a supervising therapist at Pillars Community Health. This means I supervise staff from various programs at our agency and also have a caseload of my own of clients that I work with.
So the theme for this National Recovery Month is that recovery is for everyone. So you've worked with many different people at many different points in their recovery journey. So I'm curious from your perspective, what does that mean that recovery is for everyone?
Yeah, so for me, what I've observed is that there isn't a single type of individual that comes in seeking recovery or to make a change in their life. In the years that I've been practicing, people from different stages in their life, whether they're teenagers or older adults or they're emerging adults, come to search to make a change. There isn't like a poster child for what recovery looks like or who recovery is for, because it truly is for everyone.
Yeah, and I mean, historically, when we think about recovery, I think the thing that comes to mind is substance use disorders. But more recently, it's expanded to include mental health or behavioral health in general. But I would even argue it expands farther than that. Many people are in recovery for a medical condition, or they're in just recovery for a change they want to see in their life, some sort of positive change, some sort of future that they want to see for themselves, whether that's changes in their relationships, changes in their daily habits. I think there's a point, probably for each of us, at some point where we are in recovery in some sense. Would you agree with that, or where have you seen recovery sort of be expanded and people sort of take advantage of it in different ways other than just around substance use?
I've noticed in the last year and a half that I'm hearing more and more people talk about recovery from the experience of COVID and the pandemic that required us to make a lot of changes that maybe we didn't want to. And now with some options to adjust and to return to things as they were before, I'm hearing people talk about recovering just from that experience. I think recovery can also happen after a major loss in a person's life. What does it mean to recover when you were let go from a job that was really important to you, or an individual has passed and that's never been something you've experienced before? So I think recovery is definitely something that plays a role in life experiences. And you're right, people generally do think about substances when we say recovery, but it is so much more broader than that.
And one of the things I think that we talk a lot about as behavioral health professionals, and certainly in the health center, we talk about a lot as a team, is that there's sort of no one prescriptive way to be in recovery. That process looks different for everyone. Have you seen that? Have you seen sort of different trajectories that people take, and in what ways might recovery look different from one person to another?
Yeah, I think recovery looks different for different people because people have different changes that they want to make and different goals that they're striving for, right? For one person, recovery could mean that they're talking to a friend again. For someone else, that can expand to their going out of their home and engaging in an activity that they used to really enjoy, but was lost along the way somewhere. Recovery can also be very structured, and people can find comfort in that, whether it's through achieving specific steps or much more fluid, where people are discovering what works for them as they go without some kind of prescriptive method. And we explore all available options to people so that they can make an informed decision that works for them at that point in their life, because it definitely doesn't do any good if someone is seeking to make a change in their life and we're very rigid about this is how it should be done, because we're not going to learn about an individual from a textbook. They're going to tell us about themselves, and then we work together on determining what their recovery looks like for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the ways that I kind of think about that is that the recovery and just change in general is about the future, right? The future is changeable. It's negotiable. We can figure out what kind of future we want. The past is less so. So I think that if we focus on the future, we focus on where as an individual do you want to get? What is that ideal place that you want to find yourself in? And then recovery really is about then what are the steps you take to get there? And so I think if you got 100 people in a room, you'd have 100 different futures that those people want to see. Everybody has different values. Everybody has different relationships that are important to them, different interests, different dreams. And so this is really about, I think, thinking about what future do you want to have, and then figuring out, what is it going to take to move towards that. And so, I mean, it's really important too, I think, then if you are interacting with somebody else who is in recovery of their own, to sort of understand that, right? Their journey is going to look very, very different than what yours is, because their destination is different than what yours is. Yeah.
I think about how when we're thinking of the future, we can have long-term goals and short-term ones as well. So sometimes a person is very committed to achieving something that isn't going to take a day or a week or a month. But I think one of the things that happens, whether it's in the health center or in individual therapy, is how can we break this down to something that can be done in 1 week, or what can you do in the next 24 hours to take a small step towards recovery or towards that long-term change that you'd like to see. And that process of evaluating what's working and what's not working is something that's ongoing and definitely requires collaboration between the person who's seeking that change or working towards recovery and the people that are supporting them through that.
So let's say that I have a change I want. Let's say there's something in my life that I want to see different. How do I get started? Like where do I start? Because it seems overwhelming, right? Like how do I get started moving towards that?
So I would say that simply by acknowledging that there is a change that you'd like to make, you've already started. And you're right that it can be overwhelming to say, well, what do I do now? Because there are a number of options that a person has, and maybe getting fixated on which is the right one isn't the best way to go about it. But acknowledging that you'd like to make a change to yourself, and then sharing that with another person, someone that you trust, that you believe cares about you and has your best interests in mind, I think is a good second step. And that could be a family member or a friend. It could be your doctor. Or a colleague. I think that that's the appropriate next step, and it opens up the conversation and destigmatizes asking for help and wanting to make change and working towards recovery. So, that individual, just by listening, whoever that might be, is already supporting you in that journey towards a change that you want to make.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we said, recovery is different for everyone, but I think for a lot of people, having a supportive relationship around it, having a community around it, sort of having that honesty there, and that support and possibly accountability or whatever it happens to be, can be a really important step in that process for a lot of folks. And I also think about earlier, you talked about the like, what's going to happen, what do you want to do in the next like 24 hours? I think that's so important. Like when I was a kid, I was thinking about, like, I wanted to learn how to draw. So I went to the library and I got a book on on drawing, and I will never forget like the first thing in there, which is the biggest, the most important step in becoming good at drawing, is to not let the paper stay white. That you just, it doesn't matter what you do, you've got to just like put something down,
Yeah.
even if it's a scribble, even if it's a line, because as long as that paper stays white, you're not gonna get good at drawing. And so it's overwhelming to think like going from I don't know how to draw to I know how to draw really well, but really like the most important thing is that I start. And so I would really encourage anyone who's maybe listening to this conversation, if you're thinking this and it's sort of stimulating like, hey, there is a change I want to make, think about that next 24 hours. What is that first step that you want to take that is small, that is putting that, first line on the piece of paper, and then, in 24 hours, reevaluate. Think about, did that work? Did that not work? What did I like about it? What did I not like about it? And then sort of adjust and think, well, what's the next little piece? Maybe a week goal or something like that. But I think starting small is crucial. And I think as therapists, we know, and we have evidence to support this, that those small changes are an extremely important part of the larger change process. That it starts with those small things.
Yeah, and with your example about how you shouldn't leave the paper blank, even if we make a mistake, that's still information for
Yep.
us that we didn't have. So maybe we're learning how to draw, and you press the pencil, too tightly on the paper, and the tip breaks. So maybe that didn't work out as planned, but you have information for what to do differently or how to adjust that the next day. And with so many different experiences of recovery and paths that people take, it's going to be the case that you might try something and it not work out.
Yeah.
That's still valuable information, though, for learning what works for you in your situation with the change that you want to make. Even mistakes, are really important parts of figuring out how do we make a change and maintain a change.
I agree. I personally don't think it's helpful to think in terms of like failure, or I know one of the big words used in the field is relapse. Like that's not really what's important, right? It is about what did you learn from that experience? What worked? What didn't work? And every bit of that is sort of moving you towards that future that you want to have, one way or the other. I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's very important.
Yeah, and I've actually heard that instead of using the word relapse, people use the word recycle because maybe something was really, really working and it just needed to be changed a little bit. And it doesn't mean that everything now has to be thrown out. We might be able to recycle some of those things that didn't work out. I mean, kind of going with your art example, maybe it didn't turn out how you expected, but you can still do something with it. It's still useful. So I agree that relapse versus something like recycle makes a difference in how people decide to try again, or how willing they are to try something different.
Yeah, one of my old mentors would always say, "Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater," and that's always stuck with me, because there's always something useful to gain out of those experiences. So, of course, we're therapists, and so we obviously are going to advocate for therapy. But if somebody's thinking about this process and they're curious, what role could therapy play? Not every recovery process involves therapy, but for people who are curious about it, what are your thoughts on how therapy can play a role in that?
So I think therapy offers a safe space for people to speak out loud some of the things that maybe they've been thinking about for a long time. Therapy can give people the opportunity to maybe test out, even expressing ideas that they have about what could work for them, what they've tried that hasn't worked, and through hearing yourself explore these options and share them with another person, the reality of a future that you're imagining, I think, becomes more possible to people. Therapy can also be a place where if a person's feeling like they're at a loss for, I'm out of ideas, I've tried everything, to work with a provider on brainstorming, what might have worked for others in a similar situation. Because everyone's situation is unique, but like in many fields, there are patterns and things that come up that are effective or popular options for people to start with when they're looking to make a change. Therapy also offers an opportunity for people to create a plan and have another person check in with them about that, see how on track they are from that goal that might be taking a month or a week or the next day. So there's accountability, there's support, it's a non-judgmental environment, and it can be a place to also learn to receive some psychoeducation or practice skills, role play, different things that you'd like to try to do, but maybe don't feel ready to do out in the real world. It can be safer to practice those things in a room with a mental health provider.
Yeah, and I wonder if there are people out there, and I think I've even been in that position before, where I would assume therapy is going to be prescriptive in a way, that it's going to say this is how you have to do it in order to get better or whatever that is. But I really think good therapy, and as a side note, we do good therapy at Pillars Community Health. Good therapy is collaborative, right? It is working together, the therapist and the client, to figure out what is going to work for that specific person in their specific life with their specific goals and aspirations. And it really is more of a kind of a discovery process than someone sort of saying, this is, you got to do X, Y, and Z to get, to be in recovery, which I just think isn't helpful or true.
Yeah, I think a person, when they're in therapy, through participation and discovery, learns what works for them specifically. And just as we talked about kind of attempts to do things one way and maybe them not working out how you imagined, that still helps us refine what is going to work for that person. So we can definitely pull from books or education, but at the end of the day, that's not going to be nearly as important as the person coming in with their own ideas and motivation and desire to make a change, and sharing what their strengths are, what they've done that's worked, because everybody has strength, and people are very resilient. I often like to say to people, you've made it this far, you're doing something right. So what is that? And can we do more of it? So it really is crucial to collaborate, because I need to know what it is that a person is already doing that's helping, and offer potentially some suggestions about how they could do more of this or less of that, but always with their consent and feedback.
Yeah, I would argue that if you're watching this video even about recovery, that you've done something to get to this point, and there's some strength that you're drawing on regardless of what your situation is. But yeah, I thank you so much for taking this time and having this conversation with me. It's so important, and I think a conversation that needs to see the light of day more, and people would benefit from having. So I hope this has stimulated something. It certainly has for me, and given me a lot to think about. But yeah, thank you so much, and talk to you later.